93, got that beat.
What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here to another episode of Watch God Work. In every episode, we get the distinct pleasure and honor to speak to a brother or sister that's doing exceptional work in every field of human endeavor, and to share their God stories, the ways in which God has been at work in their life, and the ways in which God has been at work through their work. And today, I'm really excited to have our brother, your brother, my brother, Mr. King Archie Green. What's going on, King?
Pleasure and an honor to be here, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well, brother, man. You are a barrier breaker, bro, but you are awareness builder. And the first level of awareness building is for them people who still think that Bone Thugs and Harmony came from Cali. They did not. So shout out to the shirt. You know, hey, bro, you understand? The people are still caught in the armed and dangerous, and that's gonna go over some. That's gonna go over some people's heads. This is gonna go over some people's heads. But I'm so thankful to be having this conversation with you, brother. Cleveland, Ohio. To say you're a musician, I think you're just a masterful communicator. And that you allow your art not only just to live through eardrums, but you have allowed it to partner with brands. You have allowed it to be an awareness builder from what actually has been taking place in your life. I would say that beyond the 5 years of you building awareness around mental wellness and how we need to be honest, be open, and drive that. But your music, brother, is it's one of those things where I'm one of those old, let me not say that and get me in trouble. You already know where I was going with it. I love lyrics. I love lyrics as lyricists. And so you've been a masterful lyricist on the music scene. You have been influenced, but you have influenced so many people. I think even before people came to know your name, they probably come to know your sounds and the work and things that you have been doing. And so, brother, man, you know how we go. You know how we roll, man. Who is Archie Green?
Man, well, first off, thank you for that glowing introduction, brother. First, I'm a man of God. First, I'm a son, husband, a brother, a friend. I know we joke about our fraternities, and our motto in Omega is friendship is essential to the soul. And I just got off the phone with one of my best friends, and I hadn't talked to him in so long because our calendars are crazy and all of that. Man, like my relationships, when I love someone, I love hard. That's who I am. And I feel like that empathy that's within me is what dictates or motivates me to do the work that I do in wellness. Whenever I see another person, I see another human being, regardless of how they look outwardly. I see their spirit. They all have a spirit. And God has blessed me with the ability to see through to that spirit. And I think I inherited that from my parents as well. Just in terms of my mother working in, she worked in community relations for a number of years, and my father worked in HR. One of the things that my dad always said was a goal of his in life, that he had prayed to God for was to be able to help people. And I feel like that's just something I inherited from both my parents, is being able to help. So, I'm a servant. I serve in sharing my story, my testimony, what I went through personally, in order to help lift someone else's spirits. I believe that God gave me this cup for a reason. And so any time that I have the chance to share what I've gone through, my story, with anyone that is willing to listen, I'll do it. It's just because, again, I've been to the lowest of lows, man. God was with me then, and he's been with me the highest of highs, being on billboards and doing all these amazing things, meeting all these amazing people. My gift has made room for me, and I don't take that for granted. But I'm also an artist. I'm a sneakerhead. I'm a Q. I'm a Morehouse man.
Oh, shout out!
All these different things, all in one, man. Like I'm definitely a Renaissance man. I'm a jack of every trade, damn near.
I love this, man. There's so much here, right? And I think these are conversations, as all of them. I think I get excited for different reasons for each conversation, and I think my father introduced me to love of music very early in my life. And, I was a violin player for a long time. Obviously, you don't get much G points, when you walk around with your violin. But it made me appreciate music and the layers to music. But when you hear the story of musicians, it's almost like there's this paradox. Because for many times, for people, music is ministers. Music is therapeutic. It's healing. While at the same time, those who have been healing and ministering to so many people through their music are suffering. We see we see that dichotomy. We've lost many people from Whitney, Brick City, shout out Jersey, people whose music. And so when did music first minister to you in your life, brother?
Man, that's a phenomenal question. I was in a similar way. I was exposed to music at a young age. My parents would play records throughout the house. I was actually just reflecting recently on the fact that every Friday my dad would play one of your frat bros, Montel Jordan, every Friday. That's how we do it. That's how we would start the day.
That's how we do it. That's how we start the day.
That's how we do it. Yeah, every Friday. But for me, I was a band nerd, man. I played the saxophone, the alto, the tenor, and the bass. I learned how to play all three of those. And that's really what informed me as a producer and a songwriter. But as far as when it really ministered to me, I remember the moment. I was in history class. This was my year. We were watching the Malcolm X film, Spike Lee's film. And it was the scene, I think you know what scene I'm talking about. The scene where he was on his way to the Audubon ballroom and this song came on. It was just the soul stirring song that it struck. It gave me a feeling I had never felt before, man. It gave me just this crazy feeling. So as soon as I got home, I found the double tape that we had. I put it in the VHS and I called my mom into the room. I said, "Mom," I fast forward to the scene. I said, "Mom, what song is that? What is this?" And she's like, "That's Sam Cooke, A Change Gonna Come." And it was just because of all, you could feel the pain. You could feel the somewhat optimism that he had. You could feel his exhaustion, everything in that song. And so I just kept chasing that feeling after I heard that song. So that's when I first was really diving into how music made me feel, and how gravitating towards the words or gravitating towards the feeling. After that, I was going through all my parents' old CDs. I was buying old CDs. I was the guy in high school, believe it or not, that in between class periods when I'm carrying this big Case Logic. I know I'm dating.
I was like, you were the Columbia House $1 dude.
Oh my God. I was that guy. Between one class, I'm listening to Sam Cooke. Another class, I'm listening to Frank Sinatra. Another class, I'm listening to Jay-Z. Another class, I'm listening to Isaac Hayes. I was listening to all of this mosaic of music that has really informed who I am as a person, what moves me. So I would say high school, man, my senior year, that's when that's when I started producing. I've been songwriting since I was 13. I started writing raps when I was 13 years old. And, it was Hard Knock Life, that music video that did it for me. That was the one that was oh, wow, man, I want to do that. I knew I wanted to be an entertainer. Originally, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be on TV. But when I saw Jay-Z on that blue Bentley Azure, I was like, "Oh, I want to do that. I want to put rhymes together. I want to do that." Yeah, man. Yeah. So at a relatively early age,
man. So you brought up just this point of mosaic and how you thought how the musical influence in your life almost was like that. I think we take for granted when you talk about even music, how much a step of faith it is to be that young and to actually believe that you can make a living Right? And remember, like I'm saying this as, you know, our families, like as much as it gets encouraged, you're in school, go do it. There's a shift because I would say from a musical side, people understand I call like life R&D, research and development. You hear about artists going off to Europe, going off to go home to the continent to get influence, to get inspired for their albums to come back. Yeah. So get their sonics right and come back. The flip side is, I think similarly, there's this parallel between when people think about what they're called to do with their lives, how they're supposed to serve. They get all these influences, but then they find themselves more confused. But you found yourself more fused to your path. So talk about just, you know, from 13 on, you're like, this is what I want to do. Did it cross your mind? Like, is this realistic? Should I even be, you know, is this not a hobby? What was that like, bro?
Brother, it was a struggle in the beginning, you know, because, you know, as you could probably imagine, you know, when I told my parents I was going to be a big rap star, I mean, you know, it wasn't like a glowing like, oh, that's great. That's amazing. No, it was like, okay, so this is a phase he's going through. And then when he gets out of this phase, he's going to get a real job and he's going to get a real career that's more stable and all that. But man, for me, you know, I was born to be a creator. I was always a creative. You know, my parents, when I was probably 10, they got me a Casio keyboard. And it was primarily because I would be, anytime we would go to like, you know, you remember Circus City.
Oh, yeah, bro. Nobody beats the Wiz, Circus City, all that.
I would be the one that was playing on them keys, you know, just messing around, not really knowing what I was playing. And so I think it was around when I was 10, 11, they got me a Casio. So I would play around with that. And I would play stuff that I would hear on the radio by ear. And, you know, once I started, you know, once I saw, you know, what Hove did with Hard Knock Life, I started writing my own raps. And I was using my dad's old tape recorder, the one where you had to press record and play at the same time.
Oh, yeah, the corner pocket. I call it the corner pocket, the two
yes, Sir. Yeah. Yes, sir, the corner pocket. I had to, you know, the only way I could, like, I didn't have a computer, so I was literally playing the music in the background while I'm recording the vocals on the tape. Like, it was real, like, and initially, as with any artist or anyone that finds their calling initially, you just do it because it's in you. It's something that you just love to do. It was something I loved to do. And, you know, so when I saw Jay doing this thing, was like, okay, I want to do that. But when I saw Ye come out with College Dropout, that's when I knew, like, oh, I could actually make a living as a rapper. Like, because, you know, you remember back in those days before Kanye, if you wasn't from the hood, if you wasn't selling drugs, if you wasn't saying B's and H's and all these other things, like, it was like, what's the point of you being a rapper? You ain't got no struggle.
It's like, what's your credibility
you ain't
like?
Got no, you know, no street cred, nothing like that. Kanye even the playing field for everybody, you know. And so when Ye came out with College Dropout, he totally changed the game and totally opened the floodgates for any person out there that wanted to be an artist. And that's when I knew for real that I could actually make a living being a rapper. Like, it was something that my parents forever just was like, yo, like, this is cool to do as a hobby, but you got to get a real job. You got to find something real. But when Kanye did his thing, that's when I knew I could really be an artist. But I mean, it was hard, man. I had, you know, my parents may not remember, but I remember all the arguments we had. I remember like being in tears, you know what I'm saying? Fighting with my parents. And I remember thinking that this isn't what God called me to do because of my family, because of the way my parents have rejected, not because they didn't love me, because they loved me, because they didn't want me to suffer, because of all these different things. You know, I was like, well, maybe this isn't what God called me to do. You know, he didn't call me to be a rapper or be an artist or be a creative. He called me to do something else. And so I went through seasons where it was like, well, you know, I'll just do this on the side, but I'll get a, you know, I'll stay in the books. I'll get a regular job and all of that. And another milestone or another breaking point for me was in 2010. So at this time, you know, Talib Kweli, who's, you know, a lyrical legend, you know, well-known in the game, had did this competition where it was like an open call to any artist unsigned, because he was putting together what he was calling the community mixtape. So it was a bunch of artists from around the world submitting music for the chance for Talib Kweli to basically give his stamp of approval. And, so I was reluctant at first. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not really into contests and all of that. What's the chance that I would actually get picked? And one of my buddies was like, man, you're a talented lyricist, man. Like, I think you should seriously consider submitting some songs. So I was working on an album at that time, and I had, this song that I wrote was called I Owe You. I made the beat and I wrote this rhyme, just talking about like how I was working this 9 to 5 and how, I was going to make it. And I, basically I owe everything to all the people that believed in me. And I submitted the song. I waited like until the deadline, which was like, I think 2 months later, heard nothing. I was like, oh, well, I guess I ain't make it. Man, like a month after, so 3 months later, I get the email from Talib Kweli's record label saying we selected, Kweli personally selected your song to be a part of this community mixtape. And it was like, you mean to tell me like one of the dopest MCs in the game, like this guy is signed, he's, he thinks my music is dope. And so I ended up, they had this release party in New York. So I'm thinking to myself, like, man, like I went to this party, like, man, I'm thanking God. And I'm like, man, my music brought me here. I walk in and this other, the DJ that night was a buddy of mine. His name was Mick. Back then he was going by Mick Boogie, big time DJ. He's based in New York. And I walk in and he plays my record in the club.
I know you were Bruce Leroy glowing. You were glowing, fam. You know what I'm saying? You had the glow.
You couldn't tell me nothing after that, bro. You couldn't tell me nothing. That was like, moment, changing point in my entire life, Lawrence. Like that was when I knew, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I've been called to do. Period.
I love this story. I love how you took us along in that story, man. Of like, you weren't going to do it. Your boy's like, you should probably do it. You didn't wait, you do it. You wait. You ain't hear nothing. Then a month after that, you hear something. I think this is where I think when we talk about watching God work, you talked about IOU, and the natural question, and I think those who watch and listen is kind of like, when did it become like I owe you, God, right? And so and it seemed like that was a wink moment. Like God was just like, kind of when Jay the Beans and like, what we do, he was like, keep going, right? Like, what I'm saying? Like, that was one of them moments where, shout out to Philly. Like, I think that was the moment when he did that. And so once you had that, clearly there's the connection that you're getting, the affirmation publicly, internally that kind of registers with you, right? But clearly this is not necessarily, it's a roller coaster, right? And so when was the next keep going, right? Where God was kind of like, hey man, okay, cool. You saw that, you saw what I did there, right? When did it kind of, the floodgates go and you're like, no, God is rolling. I need to catch up.
Man, so fast forward a couple years, I was working dead end jobs. I was a banker. I was working at PNC Bank. I was the guy who you would come and see if you needed a loan, a credit card, a checking account, whatever the case may be. I was that guy, but I needed to get to New York. I was like, man, I don't know how, but I need to get to New York. And because I had, I'm from Cleveland, so I had heard about Kid Cudi moving to New York, picking up all his stuff. This other rapper who's from Massillon, this guy named Stally, he did the same thing. He moved to New York. So I was like, man, I got to get to New York. I don't know how. And I started looking up schools. I was like, well, if I could go to a grad school there, maybe that would be my ticket to go. And so like I stumbled upon this program at New York University. For me, it was like, I'm just trying to go, right? Like, I'm not even thinking about the illustrious, illustrious school with a great reputation. I'm like, whatever I got to do to get there. But the way God worked this out, man, is just, it's insane. Like, to look back on it and think about
Talk to us.
hurdles, all these seeming hurdles that I had to go over, the fact that I applied, that I got in, and it was a very competitive pool of applicants from all over the world. And I got in. So not only that, this is the part where God really worked. I was like, okay, so where am I going to live? Like, I don't know anybody in New York or anything. My mom was like, well, there's this guy who he just interned for me last summer. He's in New York. He's actually studying at NYU for journalism. Why don't you call him? He might know somewhere that you can live, you can stay. I'll call him up. This guy, I don't know him from Adam. A guy named Will Cooper. I give him a call. I said, hey, Will, my name is Lamont. Lamont is my other name. Me and my dad share the same name. I said, my name is Lamont, and I'm trying to find a place to live in New York. And I know you intern for my mom. He's like, man, that's crazy because, one of our roommates is moving out. So we're looking. You want to talk about God working? This was sight unseen. I knew that this was God working. I was like, you know what? Bet I'm your new roommate. I hadn't seen the place. I hadn't met any of my roommates, bro. Nobody. And I get to New York, and I still remember on the first day, it took me forever to find the place. I'm like walking the streets with this briefcase, this suitcase behind me, dragging. I finally get there, and and Will was in my wedding. He's one of my best friends. And that time there. That time really molded me into not just the artist, but the businessman that I am. It gave me, that time in New York changed my life. It gave me the entrepreneurial spirit that I truly needed. And the experiences that I had as far as the internships, I interned for Red Bull Records, and which I didn't even know Red Bull had a record label back then. Amen,
but we're all finding, many of us are all finding it out. We're like, word.
And and I'm in artist meetings, and we're, one of the things I helped to assist was they were talking about this one artist named AWOL Nation. He had this song called Sail, and it had a very soulful kind of feel to it. And I was like, man, this sounds like a hip hop record. It don't sound like a rap record, or it sounds like something I would sample as a producer. And we had this A&R development call, and we were talking about ways we can kind of break them over, transition to other markets. I was like, man, there's this new rapper from Compton, California, as part of his collective called TDE. His name is Kendrick Lamar. You need to holler at him. You need to get him on the record. Man, a month later, Kendrick's in the studio recording a remix to this song called Sail. You can look up YouTube, everything. It's out there. So I had real impact in the industry. Another thing, Kendrick related, I got a chance because one of the other things that I did at Red Bull, we also moonlighted as a catering company. So we would cater special events. We catered the listening party for Good Kid, Mad City. So I'm in Chunk King Studios, listening to Good Kid, Mad City before the world. I mean, we hearing songs. It's songs that was played that day that didn't make the album. It's versions of songs. Like I heard the Gaga version of "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe." Like it was. Oh, man, all I can say, and it's something I say now more than ever, is God's favor. That God put me in that room. What wanted me to see? Why is it that me to, and what that led to was me, this guy who had done work with Red Bull, worked at a publishing company. He had started this boutique studio. He saw my work ethic. He was like, man, I'm starting this boutique studio in Brooklyn. I want you to manage it. Just intern, manage it, just run it. Like, just plucked me out of this situation with Red Bull. I'm basically managing a studio, no previous experience. We're helping to book photo shoots, studio sessions. I'm putting out certain fires, like all this stuff. And it was like God was setting me up for what was to come. Like everything that I'm experiencing now in my life, after the fire. And once I graduated from NYU, had no job, ended up having to move back home. 2 degrees, no job.
Oh man,
And,
you speaking to a generation, dog. You speaking to a generation, man. I didn't want to. I just wanted that. I didn't want that to. You're speaking. You're representing at the altar. So keep going, King.
This was the moment. What didn't feel like it during that moment, but this was the moment that God really prepared me. This was the last threshold. You know what Bishop Jakes calls crushing.
Oh yeah.
This moment right here is what Bishop Jakes calls the moment of crushing, where God will crush you, or crush like how crush a bird, an eagle, so their wings can become stronger. So at this time, when I graduated from New York University, you know, a master's in music business, I couldn't find a job, had just broken up with my then fiance, a woman who I had been with for 5 years.
Hey!
Yeah, 5 years we had been together, and you know it didn't work out, and then had to move back home. I mean, I was in denial. The first 3-4 weeks I was in denial, living on my credit card. I'm gonna make it. I'm staying in New York. I'm gonna figure this out. Couldn't find a job. Ended up having to move back home. So it was already a low point, a low period in my adult life. I was like, man, like, why is it that all these things are happening? And, I remember days where I was trying to find jobs in New York, but I was still also working on music. I remember I'd be out on my parents, in the gazebo in the backyard, and my mom, I'd be making beats and stuff. And my mom would come back out there and be like, why are you wasting your time making these beats and doing music? You should be looking for a job here in Cleveland. There's no point in going back to New York. It's just not going to work. So having to accept that failure. And at this time, I'm looking at them as losses, not lessons. Failure, all of this pain that I was going through. So I started, I was already drinking, kind of, but it started to become a problem. Like alcoholism is in my family. And on one fateful night, it was around Thanksgiving 2013. I was working 2 jobs at that point. I was working part-time mentoring youth at a local, mentorship program. And I was also working at Nordstrom. Selling shoes, selling women's shoes. And, I got a call from the bros. It was like, man, you back in town. We haven't seen you. Come through to the frat house, have a couple drinks, some laughs, and there was a voice that told me, man, you should just go home. Get some rest. You tired? Just go home. You can see the bros anytime. But that ego, have a couple drinks. What's a couple drinks? Nothing I haven't done before. I just get with the bros, have some drinks, and go home after. I get to the frat house. And when it's at the frat house, bros pour liberally. You get like a ginger ale and all this whiskey in a drink. And I always allude to Kendrick's swimming pools. It was pull up, drink, headshot, drink, drink, stand up. I was drinking, man. I made the unwise decision to attempt to drive home. And, it took me a while to forgive some of the bros because they didn't take the keys out of my hand. I was no shape of driving that night. But on my way home, I was literally about to hop on the freeway, which I'm so thankful to God that I did not. I was pulled over. I was cited for swerving. Somebody had said, this guy's swerving out here. It's not safe. I did the field test, failed it, ended up blowing way above the legal limit. And I was taken to jail, to a holding cell. The worst night of my entire life, the lowest point of my entire life. This is a guy with 2 degrees. This is a guy who was raised right. This is a guy who had two parents at home that loved him. This is a guy who cared about the community and did all these different things. And when I was in that cell, crying my eyes out, waiting for my parents to come bail me out, thank God I was able to call them and have them bail me out. As I was on that cold, long cot, there was a voice inside of me, and I know now that it was the Holy Spirit that came upon me and said two things. The first thing it told me to do was to stop crying. And I immediately stopped crying. Just came over me. The second thing that voice told me was, they can trap your body, but they can't trap your mind. They cannot trap your mind. Now, I had no idea, Lawrence, what that really meant at that time. I had no idea that this was God foreshadowing this next chapter of my life. I had no idea at that moment. But it was a calmness that came over me. But that next year, and those next now 7 years, 8 years almost, 8 years, 8 years, were the most transformative years of my life. License was suspended, could only drive to home, work, and church. So anytime I wanted to go out with the bros or with anyone, I'd have to give them a call. Hey, you come scoop me, come pick me up. And when it was time to go home, I needed a ride home. And I lived in a part of town called Aurora, Ohio, which is about 45 minutes from downtown Cleveland. So it's away from all the action. So if someone was going to come get me, that was my homie for real.
Yeah, that was friends who helped you move, friends who picked you up for 45 hours.
Driving 45 minutes, you know, especially after drinking, partying. So what happened was I started shutting people off. You know, I started isolating myself. I started isolating myself. I started feeling like a burden to others, to my family, to my friends. I would spend days in bed. Phone would be right next to my bed. I wouldn't be able to pick it up if it rang. It felt like a brick picking up that phone. I didn't know at that time that I was experiencing depression, real depression for the first time. You know, I was smoking cigarettes. I had suicidal ideation. And for those that don't know what suicidal ideation is, it is basically questioning, why am I here? And visualizing or thinking about what life would be like if I was no longer in it, if I was no longer on this planet. And having those conversations, those hard conversations with God. Why am I here? Why, Lord? Why would you put me through this? Why? All of this questioning. And it was that next Thanksgiving 2014, my sister and I hosted for the first time. We were renting a house together, and we had all of our family, our grandparents, aunts, uncles. And after dinner, I had to excuse myself and go to my bedroom because I was feeling claustrophobic. At that time, I was starting to count down the hours that had been since I had been alone by myself, away from everyone. What I didn't realize at that time was I was experiencing a panic attack from my anxiety. My anxiety was so ramped up from all the action that was going on around me that I needed to be alone. And so it was at around that time that another fraternity brother of mine, you know, he could tell that something was up. He reached out to me, said, Arch, man, you know, it seems like you're going through something. Have you ever thought about therapy? Have you ever thought about talking to someone? And this is how God works. He has these angels, these guardian angels. I hadn't really talked to Gary in years, but he saw me, saw what I was going through. He reached out to me. He was like, man, have you ever thought about talking to someone about what's going on in your life? And at that time, I was like, well, you know, I had thought about it, but I had never really gone through with it because nobody that looked like us was really talking about therapy. Exactly. We pray it away, right? Exactly. we talk to Big Mama now, and or this is what we as black men do. We toughen up. We don't cry. Boys don't cry. We work. We figure it out on our own. We don't need no help. But for me, it was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to therapy. And I found a therapist, older black male, which is very important when you're seeking out therapy. You find someone that you personally feel comfortable with. And I was clinically diagnosed with major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder, or depression and anxiety. And that was when the healing began, man. That's when the healing began.
Bro.
That was the birth of the coke dealer right there.
Thank you. Thank you. I think people have to hear all of that because there's so many hooks for people in that, where people could see this question of God, why am I here, man? There are levels to that. And I think that is, I think, perhaps one of the most common questions people ask, like, you know, why am I here? What is my meaning? What should I be doing? But why am I here? Right. But the more you feel frustrated that you haven't resolved that, the heavier that question becomes, the more you question whether or not that there was any purpose in you being here, on top of the fact of looking around and thinking that you somehow underperformed, in quotes, God's grace. Quote, for people who understand it, that actually doesn't make sense what I'm saying, but I'm saying it with intention to say, got it, you 2 degrees, parents, all of these things. Why is it this way? Oh, is it just because of me? I'm not enough. And so this is particularly good because I think the natural question, I think, especially when I talked about even like with some levity, the, you know, Bruce Leroy, you in the club, you hearing your joint, you walking through there. And, you know, typically once you're kind of feeling that, it's kind of like the glow out of the water. And then right after that, you find him in the wilderness with the enemy right up in his face. That was Jesus' story. It seemed like that was the challenge, where it's like, all right, look, I have this movement. This is happening. This is rolling and this is in my face. Now, I have to ask a question. So now when you had that whisper, the gentle whisper in the jail cell, in the holding cell, and then you now find, okay, I now understand what this is that is a part of this journey right now. How did you then reconcile the quote unquote call, right? Was it, okay, God, you've given me 2 assignments, right? And I need to do this wholeheartedly. Was it that, you know what, at the end of the day, I had to focus on this. And so in this season, I then created, obviously I did created the foundation. I did my work. And then I got back to music. Where was the call of your creative hand, the gift, and also this journey of discovery and healing that you were having? How did you walk together? How did you reconcile? Was it sequential? What was going on in your mind?
Great question. So I would say once I was able to start learning how to cope with my mental illness, and it wasn't just therapy, I was watching Les Brown videos. Come on, Wayne Dyer. Like, I was the self-help junkie. I was doing because it was in me, man. And that's, you know, that right now, me reflecting on that lets me know is, you know, subconsciously, I knew that this wasn't me. This was a thing. This was a disorder. This was what I now call a monster that had become a me. But it wasn't the core of who I was. The core of who I was still alive and well. But it was trying to chip away, or unintended, peel the layers back of what was really going on. And I say that when one of the things that I shared with you earlier in our conversation is I love to share. Like, my story and everything I've gone through and how I'm a servant. And I had, after I had gotten to like a breaking point where I was really starting to feel like myself again. I'm starting to go out more and, spending less weekends on the couch and, being out with friends. And, I have to give credit to my sister, my then girlfriend. I mean, they kind of helped me when I was really going through it as well. They gave me, one of the big coping mechanisms that they used on me was positive affirmations. I remember it was Valentine's Day 2015. I was on the couch all day. It was a snowstorm. And they somehow got me to get off the couch and go to my room to grab something for them. And I start walking up the stairs, see Post-it notes, pointing directions to my room. And finally get to my room. I open the door, and there had to have been at least 100 Post-it notes saying, somebody is praying for you, saying you're a great brother, saying you are a king. All of these positive affirmations for someone who didn't see that within themselves, not because of myself, because of this thing, this monster that had taken control. And so after, I would say, probably 2 solid years of therapy, as any artist will do, I poured that out into my music, like my art. I wrote a song that was part of an album that I was working on at the time. I wrote a song called Layers about my experience as a Black man going to therapy. And my buddy Will, the one who I ended up living with in New York, at this point, he's working for Vice. He's a senior digital editor for Vice. And he calls me one day and he's like, hey, man, we're doing this feature on, and I don't even know, I wasn't even really talking to people about therapy and that kind of thing. But, again, it's God putting these pieces together, this big chess set, and he's setting all these moves up. And he calls me and said, man, we're doing this feature on rappers talking about depression. You got a song that you wrote?
Oh, my God. My goodness.
Man, I said, man, do I? I got a song I just wrote about my experience going to therapy and doing all these things. Now, I did this song. I gave them the song. I did an interview with Vice. The day before this interview comes out, I get a call from my dad because I had told one of my best friends that I was going to therapy and I was depressed and, and how I was pouring into my music and everything. And coincidentally, my best friend's dad, my dad was his dad's dean of pledges back in college, so they had that kind of relationship. So he's telling my dad, you need to watch out for your son. He talk about he depressed and all this, what's going on with him. So my dad calls me. This is the day before this article at Vice.com is coming out. And he's like, you need to really be careful who you talking to about, what's going on. You got to kind of keep that to yourself. We don't talk about family business out in public and all that. I'm like, okay, Dad. Knowing that thousands of people around the world that are going to know my story. Article comes out, song comes out. And within 2 weeks, he had garnered 25,000 streams in 2 weeks. I remember I was actually on the stewardship committee at church. And this was maybe a week or so after the song had come out. And I remember I kept on checking my SoundCloud that night, refreshing it. And it just hit that night. I got a bump of 10,000 streams that night alone. And it was amazing, to see God work. But it was after that was a sign to me that, okay, this talking about mental health is something that people really need. People like us, people that look like you and me, really need more of. Because at this time, in rap, depression is not a new topic, but the primary method of how we coped was through drugs, alcohol, violence, sex. Nobody talked about therapy. That wasn't a common thing. And I was at the forefront of this movement of talking about mental health. And so this is where my mentor, my frat bro who's been on your show, Aaron Arnold, comes into play. So I had known Aaron for a number of years. I was inspired by his story of how he was the one that kind of motivated me to chase my dreams. He had worked a 9 to 5, quit his job, and worked his way up to being Diddy's assistant. It was so inspiring. Then when I finally was a fraternity brother of mine, I was that much more inspired. So anyway, like, I was working at PNC. I was back at the bank working at PNC at this time, and I sent Aaron a link to my new album. And he this story is so funny. He tells me, all right, man, I'm finally going to listen to your project. Like, I'm super busy, so I'm gonna skim through it. I'll let you know what I think, when I get a chance. And next thing I know, he texted me lyrics from his favorite songs. He done ran songs back. I'm at work, right? I'm on the floor agreeing. And this guy is blowing my phone up. He's like, Arch, you need to call me. I ducked out in the break room. I gave him a call. I said, what's up, bro? Like, what'd you think? And he said, he'll say, like, he was half joking, but he said, man, quit your job, man. What are you doing? Quit your job. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. You ain't supposed to be working as a banker. Man, I don't think I've ever heard anyone as talented as you, as an artist, as a lyricist, as a producer, as all these different things. This is what you need to be doing. And so, that was a seed that was planted. Now, at this time, also, I had met my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And, man, we were definitely made for each other. I can honestly say that when God crafted us, our mother's womb, he had us in mind.
Woo! Put it on the card, fam. Bars, man.
Bruh, we truly believe that our covenant with the Lord is bigger than us. It's not about us. Like, it's about our love, but it's also about the people we serve, because she's also in the wellness space, primarily in movement, fitness, and pushing women to be confident and to see new versions of themselves, to feel sexy, to feel confident, and all these different things, where I'm pouring into men and getting their minds right. So anyway, at this time, we had been dating, man, we had only been dating maybe 6 months. I tell her, like, so I'm thinking about, quitting my job. And, and at this time we had moved in together. She's like, she believed in me so much that she said, you know what? Whatever we need to do, I got us. Quit your job. Quit your job. Whatever you need, I got you. Food, clothing, someone's shoulder to lean on, someone's arms to be cradled in. She seen me at my worst, man. I had breakdowns. I'm screaming in her chest because I'm like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. If it means this much sacrifice, this much pain, I don't want to do this anymore. She was there every step of the way, man. And she planted that seed that I needed, that last bit of motivation and push that I needed for God to work. And in that moment, when I quit my job and I started, just figuring things out, it was trial and error. I had guys who were talking about they wanted to manage me that didn't work out. And, I was putting out different music. Some of the music was working, some of it wasn't. But, I knew that I was born to do music. But after I wrote Layers, I realized why.
Stop. Hey, bro, he was like, like the tape running back. I knew I was born to do music, but at that moment, I realized why.
Yeah,
I think sometimes we confuse the means with the destination. Like, we confuse the means with the destination, or we confuse that with, like, just that's where the music is. It's like, at the end of the day, it all leads to people. We're fishers of men and women, man. And so I had to stop you there, because the why, I think for everybody, I could relate to this. I think some people could relate to this piece about the work. That gas runs out. I don't care if you got 93 octane or not, when it gets disconnected from the people. Ultimately, you may go for a little bit, but when you don't get the why down, You're going to lose it. So this is, at that moment, you knew why. How did all of this change your conversations with God? Because what I love about what you're saying is that you're not painting a solid color palette. This wasn't clean. You were like, yo, there was doubt, there was trial and error. As I'm realizing, as she's like, you know what, cool, I got you, let's rock and roll. I'm still having moments where I'm crying in her lap. I'm still like, there's the pain. It's all of this is still happening. How were your conversations with God different on the other side, or at least as you're walking through the valley? Let me put it that way. Okay, I understand that you've given me vision. I understand that layers has really shown me something. Now I'm understanding why, but I'm still suffering. How did you make sense of that? And what were you how was your conversation with God different?
I mean, I would say, so one of the things also for me, my mother, I wear this bracelet. I've worn this bracelet on my wrist since my mother gave it to me when I was at college. It's my favorite verse, Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart. So I see this every day. So my conversations were turning into really trusting in the Lord in a whole different way than I had before. When I first started doing music, I wanted to be like Jay-Z. I wanted to be like Kanye. Eventually, I wanted to be like Drake. I wanted to be this big superstar. Once I threw all that out the window and said, all I want to do, Lord, is I just want to minister to people through my story. I just want to help save lives. It's not about me. That's when all these floodgates of opportunities and everything started pouring in. I was motivated and inspired to start my nonprofit, Peel Them Layers Back, because I was like, man, why is it that I know about this thing that's out in plain sight for everyone called therapy, but there is no one that looks like me that's talking about it, that's going to therapy. And in so many different ways, when I would say, not me, Lord, right? Like we think like, we think like Moses, holler at my brother Aaron, he could talk better than me. I'm not that good of a talker.
It's the stuff. You know
It's you. I chose you for this moment. And it's more apparent now than it ever has been. Like, Lord, just use me. Like whatever is in your will, not my will, whatever is in your will, use me. And that's it. And my conversations moved more so off of what's in it for me, what's in it for the Lord's will in my life. That my story, the cup that I was given, all that pain, all that suicidal ideation, all these different dark days that I experienced, how is it that God wants me to use that? Or to quote Kendrick Lamar, how is it that God wants me to pimp it? To pimp this story that was given to me. And when I started my organization and I took a non-conventional approach to mental health awareness, bringing in speakers of color, bringing in my pastor, bringing in, a music therapist, bringing in some of my other mentors to be a part of this conversation about mental health, but putting a hip hop spin on it, because hip hop is in my DNA. It's part of everything I do. It's how I walk, how I talk, how I dress, all these different things. And of course, the music. And when I saw the people's response to it, it was like, wow. And I truly understand how I have every right to be pretentious. I have every right to be arrogant. I have every right to think that I did all this by myself. That wasn't how I was raised. One thing my parents always, that seed that they planted, they pounded into me and my sister's DNA, is to be humble and to remember that everything comes from the Lord. Everything, all your blessings, all the opportunities that you have. And so when you walk around knowing that it came from the Lord, the next thing you're thinking is, okay, God, what do you want me to do with it? How do you want me to use this opportunity? And so the next thing I know, I'm getting calls from I got a call from BBC News the day after Kid Cudi had wrote his letter about going to rehab. I'm getting, my local news channels, local NBC, ABC calling me to do interviews. I'm getting, I ended up doing an interview with a magazine out in Scotland, of all places, talking about mental health and hip hop. I mean, God took me places all over the world that I would never have imagined, but I always wanted, right? When I thought it was about me. This is the big thing I tell artists. Find something that is bigger than you. It's not about you in the end. There is a skill, God gave you a gift to connect with people, to see eye to eye with people, with what they're going through. Once you latch on to something that's bigger than you, once you realize it's not really about you, that's when God works. That's when he really works. That's what happened, man. Like, I honestly, man, like this last, I was reflecting on it because I just celebrated my birthday. And
happy birthday,
I was
King.
reflecting on, thank you, brother. Thank you, King. I appreciate that. I was reflecting on how far God has taken me in all of these rooms and all of these people that I've met. I mean, this billboard that God put me on, representing Black men and mental health in our city. I did this talk with one of my buddies who's running for mayor of Cleveland. We had a real heart-to-heart on IG Live. He sees a role for me, in his campaign because of how important this talk is, and then other things that just so happen to happen. Like, this story is about to blow your mind. This story right here.
We prepared, bro. We've been sitting back. We prepared, man. Look, come on, bro.
Bro. So I made history. I became the first rapper to ever perform at our Severance Hall, which is where the Cleveland Orchestra, world-renowned Cleveland Orchestra performs. We did an event. I know you spoke on picking up the violin and how, like, certain people might look at that certain type of way. I wanted to change the perception within the Black community of what these kids saw when they saw a violin. So, like, this program, we taught these kids how to write rhymes. We taught them how to play the classical guitar. But the song that they learned how to play was Old Town Road. They learned how to play that. That was popping at that time. So, and then I ended up performing with a 15-piece chamber ensemble. I did all these original records. And I knew it was a seed that God had planted in me 10 years, was 10 years in the making, doing that. And at that time, again, I was like, all right, Lord, I just want to help make it happen. I don't have to be the one on stage. It's not about me. It could be, I was trying to see if I could get Kid Cudi to perform with the orchestra, some of that nature. And God, once again, was like, no, it has to be you. I chose you to open this door. I chose you to be on that stage. And so we do this event. I mean, the city is on fire, just totally inspired by this transformational event. A few weeks later, I get a call from one of my buddies who works in film. And he's like, he's on the set of this new Hampton film that's filming in Cleveland. And Ryan Coogler is one of the producers of the film. He's like, hey, man, so Ryan Coogler's in town. He wants to go to the orchestra. Do you have any, connects? Can you, do you have any plugs? I'm like, you mean the director of Black Panther wants to go to the Cleveland Orchestra? Do I have any plugs? I mean, I got the CEO's number on speed dial. So my wife and I end up hosting Ryan Coogler, his wife, the production team of Judas and the Black Messiah to a very special performance at Severance Hall. It's Ryan's first time ever going to see a live orchestra. He had never seen an orchestra in his entire life. So this is a moment he'll never forget. The fact that God gave me that opportunity to be amongst someone who has done so much for our culture. But again, one of the things that I said, and I feel like this is why God has put me in this position to be around these people is when I saw Ryan Coogler, I didn't see the guy who directed Black Panther. I didn't see this guy who had done all these amazing things. I saw a brother. I saw another human being. I didn't mention Black Panther, but maybe one time that night, just thanking him, hey man, my nephew was was T'Challa for Halloween. So thank you for what you did. Outside of that, I was humble. I did my best to be a gracious host. Next thing I know, I get a call. Hey man, we're looking for extras for Judas and the Black Messiah. Are you interested? I'm like, man, of course. So I go down to casting. They put me in this, they had me pick out my hair. They put me in this crazy outfit. Again, all along this story, Lawrence is God's favor. All of these things, I'm just like floating, and I'm just hurdles just be gone, hurdles be damned, right? Like I'm jumping all these hurdles, and so we get to the shoot that is happening. It's the most pivotal scene in the movie. It's the scene where Fred just got out of jail and he's speaking at the church, right? You know, the scene that everybody is in the trailer. They kept on showing the scene. We did, when we were getting set, at one point I was like towards the back row. At one point before we started shooting, they moved me 3 rows from the front. So there was no way you couldn't see me. And to this day, you pull that scene up on the film, you pull up the trailers, you can see me in the audience. Why was it that God put me there? Why was it that God put me there, man? Nothing but favor. And so fast forward, this past, I think it was April, when the Oscars happened, I was in LA. I was going out to LA just to get away, to have what I call my mental health retreats, to get away from all the work that I do, to also hear the voice of the Lord. Where does God want me to go? And unbeknownst to me, it was Oscar weekend. My same buddy that helped me get on the set was like, hey, man, you know it's Oscar weekend, right? I was like, man, I had no idea. He puts me on for Judas and the Black Messiah Oscar party. I'm in the room. I'm at the house. Daniel Kaluuya just won his first Academy Award. Lena Waithe is there. Cynthia Erivo is there. All these figures. At one point, we're in the house taking pictures. I turn towards the front of the room, and Drake walks in with a couple of his homies. It was the first time God had shown me, again, that these are not just these mythical figures. These are all people just like you that have emotions, that go through ups and downs, highs and lows, mountains, valleys, all these different things. And I was in the room, and God is continuing to set me up for this next chapter. And now with my nonprofit, we became a 501c3 successfully last year. And that's no small feat, man. Thank you. No small feat to do that. And we just accepted the largest grant that we've gotten. And now this thing that was created and birthed out of my pain, the seed that God had planted, now I'm going to start getting compensated as CEO of this company. It's just like,
woo! There couldn't have been a better note, brother, of bookmarking the stories, rather, because I think, as you and I talked about, this is about stories, man, but the stories are still being written. But that on the flip side of all the work and the toil that you've put in, the flip side of just holding on, where sometimes it's like, I'm just holding on. That God made a full circle to say, man, what good can come from this? What good can come from this? On this cross that you got to carry? Man, resurrection, your new life, brother. That you've been able to give people new life, that they were no longer trapped in the cell of their minds. That they recognized that there was help. That their heavenly parent was on the way to bail them out. That there were resources for them. That even as they're in that cell, that there'd be somebody to be able to speak to them like a spirit. Gentle enough that they could receive it. Clear enough that they couldn't mistake it. You were here for such a time. And so, my brother, I'm so thankful, man. I think on behalf of those who are watching this and will see this, my thank yous, man, will not end, because I think everybody who will continue to live as a result of your work, generations are thanking you. What will come from them, the sand, the stars in the sky that Abraham, you've allowed for a generation of men who will make the decision to continue to live. And so, brother, man, I can't do this justice, and I know this conversation is going to continue because I pray and I believe in faith that God will continue to allow us to lock arms and to work. But when I say I'm so thankful for you, brother, man, I cannot do it justice, brother. And so, man, you've already given us a preview in some sense of the work, because now as CEO, stewarding, pull them layers, but you're stewarding this. Now, how do people connect and support the work? And then is anything specifically coming up ahead that people could kind of really co-labor with you on and pray and support with resources and the like? How can people do that?
Absolutely. So, our organization is called Peel Them Layers Back. Our mission is to educate, empower, and equip Black men and boys with the essential tools to live a mentally healthy life through a hip hop lens. So what that means is we do it through open mics, we do it through concerts, we do it through workshops, we do it through music. And we're excited to announce a new project that we're rolling out in August that is basically has three components. It is called the Cope Dealer Initiative. That's COPE. The Cope Dealer Initiative, which is tied to my next album. It is, 15 songs detailing the experiences that we as Black men go through, living with trauma, whether it's verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse within our own family. The issues that we have with lack of proper treatment for Black women, LGBTQ community, all these different things, as well as stories of leadership, aspiration, relationship goals, fatherhood. What we're putting that into is the second component, which is a workshop where, for 10 weeks, we're meeting with young Black men, playing music, and then also insert a component of mini short documentary, a film that is tied to the content. So there's three layers to this Cope Dealer Initiative because we're visual learners, right? And because our mission is tied to hip hop, it's got to be dope music. And so week we're going to meet with these young Black men, and we're going to have conversations about these different subjects. And then we're going to offer them a coping mechanism to try out over the next week, whether it's meditating for the first time, whether it's going for a walk around the block once a day or doing some type of physical activity, whether it's vision boarding, writing things down. So at the end of the program, they'll all become cope dealers, meaning I recognize the mental illness within myself and know how to cope with it. But I also recognize the mental illness of my brother or my sister to help them cope. So what we're doing, man, is we're fostering community. That's really what, and again, it's why God put this in me. Like, when I realized it wasn't about me, it was about everything else. There's so many doors that God has opened. It's to the point where, like, now I don't even worry. I'm always like, it's God's favor. Like that song, "Favor Ain't Fair, but it sure looks fabulous."
Yeah.
That's like my favorite gospel song, man. It ain't fair, but it sure looks fabulous. And I wanted to share a verse that I recently discovered that really has helped me to understand the valley, or the plateau, rather. When it feels like, man, I'm on this path, God has me on this path, and I feel like he doesn't hear me, or I feel like nothing is really going my way. It's from the book of Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 17, 18. Though the fig tree does not bud, there are no grapes on the vines. Though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God, my Savior. Doesn't matter what's going on. Doesn't matter what you have gone through. Doesn't matter what you are going through. Continue to honor God. He is there. He is listening. He is working through you. And everything that is happening to you is happening for you.
Hey. Woo, man. Thank God for you. Thank God for this conversation. Thank God for you giving people encouragement. Encouragement to keep going. As Habakkuk said, though it may linger, though it may tarry, wait for it, for the revelation comes. My brother, thank you for giving us a revelation, and thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for his word, which is speaking. And so I will stop. Salute, brother. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Already.
Thank you.